Somewhere right now, a kid is staring at a classroom clock, waiting for a bell to ring. They have no idea that for 99% of human history, that classroom didn't exist. No bell, no teacher at the front, no building at all. And yet every single generation before us still managed to pass down everything they knew. Languages, survival skills, which plants would kill you. So when did humans actually start educating each other? Not when did we build schools. That's the easy question. The real one is, when did the first human decide what they knew was worth handing to someone else? The earliest evidence isn't a building or a written word. It's a tool. Stone hand axes dating back over 1.5 million years show a consistency of design so precise, across hundreds of thousands of years and 3 continents, that it could only have survived through direct teaching. Someone watched hands move, then moved their own the same way, then showed someone else. That's what education looked like for most of human existence. Not a classroom, but a demonstration. A child watching an adult's hands, copying, failing, getting corrected not with words, but with a repositioned finger, a redirected strike. By around 300,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens first appeared, groups lived in bands of 15 to 50 people, and the elders functioned as the entire library. Want to know which plants were safe in a drought? You asked whoever had survived the last one. Knowledge lived in people, and died with them, unless someone passed it on. Above all, that happened through story. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner analyzed hundreds of hours of recordings from the Jew Hoansi people of southern Africa, one of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth, and found that 81% of nighttime conversation around the fire was storytelling. Myths, ancestor tales, moral lessons wrapped in narrative. That was the original curriculum. Not a room, a fire, a voice in the dark, carrying information forward through time. And evolution actually built children for exactly this. Chimpanzees become nutritionally self-sufficient within a few years of weaning. Humans take 18. Biologists argue that's not a flaw, it's the design. Our unusually long childhood is a dedicated window for learning, built specifically so knowledge could accumulate across generations, instead of resetting every lifetime. You can see what that education produced, directly in the archaeological record. Around 100,000 years ago, at Blombos Cave in South Africa, researchers found perforated shell beads and processed ochre pigment, ground, mixed, and stored in abalone shells, each object requiring multiple learned steps to make. None of that happens by accident. That knowledge had to be taught, practiced, and remembered across generations. Then, around 36,000 years ago, at Chauvet Cave in France, someone painted horses, lions, and rhinoceroses with a level of perspective and anatomical accuracy that stunned researchers when the cave was rediscovered in 1994. We can't prove a teacher guided that hand directly, but skill that sophisticated doesn't appear fully formed. It accumulates through practice and observation, inside a community that already knew how. The knowledge existed collectively, before it existed in any one person. That's education, even with no name attached to it yet. If a cave painting from 36,000 years ago can carry that much accumulated teaching, subscribe. Because the actual invention that changed education forever hadn't even happened yet. Around 10,000 years ago, agriculture changed everything. Humans stopped moving, populations grew, and complexity exploded. Farmers needed to understand soil and seasons. Traders needed to calculate. Rulers needed to record laws and debts. Once the volume of information outran memory alone, humans invented writing, and for the first time, knowledge could exist completely outside a human being, stored, copied, able to outlive the person who created it. The first formal school in recorded history appeared in ancient Mesopotamia around 2500 BCE. The Sumerians called it the Ejuba, House of Tablets. Archaeologists excavating Nippur found tens of thousands of clay tablets that were literally student homework. The same signs copied over and over, vocabulary lists, calculations, preserved by accident in clay hardened by fire, 4,500 years ago. Students enrolled before age 10 and graduated roughly 12 years later, having learned cuneiform, mathematics, agricultural science, law, and astronomy. But these schools weren't built for curiosity. They were built for bureaucracy. The empire needed scribes to run trade, temples, and the machinery of the first cities. Education had officially become a tool of the state, and that shift, from learning to survive to learning what the system needs from you, is one we're still living inside today. Ancient Greece flipped the entire question. In 399 BCE, Socrates was executed for asking too many uncomfortable questions. He'd spent his life in the streets of Athens, using relentless questioning to force people to examine what they actually knew versus what they only assumed. He wrote nothing down. His classroom was wherever two people were willing to argue. His student Plato, shaken by that execution, founded the Academy in Athens in 387 BCE, open to anyone with a genuine desire to engage with ideas. No admission requirements beyond that. Aristotle arrived at 17, stayed 20 years, and later founded his own school, systematizing nearly every academic discipline we still use today. The very word academy comes from Plato's school, and it carried a radically different idea. Education existed to develop minds, not just produce workers. Universities followed directly from that idea. Bologna in 1088, still the oldest continuously operating university on Earth. Then Oxford, around 1096. Paris, around 1150. The printing press in 1440 made books cheap enough for people who weren't kings or monks, and ideas started spreading faster than any single teacher could travel, which made mass literacy suddenly necessary. Prussia introduced compulsory state education in 1763. England followed in 1870. For the first time in human history, education became something every child was simply required to receive. Step back and look at the full distance covered. A child in a hunter-gatherer band, copying an elder's hands in total silence. A student in Nippur pressing symbols into clay at sunrise because an empire needs another scribe. Aristotle walking into Plato's academy with no idea he's about to shape how humanity organizes knowledge for 2,000 years. A child in 19th century Prussia sitting in a public school for the first time, not because her family chose it, but because the state now required it. 4 entirely different reasons for education to exist: survival, administration, understanding, compliance. Every modern school system today is some blend of all 4. Here's what's worth sitting with. For most of human history, education wasn't a building. It was a relationship, someone who knew something, and someone who needed to know it. The elder and the child, the craftsman and the apprentice, Socrates and whoever showed up in the marketplace that day. The institution came later, the relationship came first. We built classrooms to make education scalable, and in solving that problem created a new one. We can now educate billions of people, but most of them spend childhood sitting in rooms being told what to know, waiting for a bell. For 300,000 years, children learned because the knowledge was directly tied to staying alive. Miss the lesson about which mushroom kills you, and you didn't get a bad grade, you got something far worse. We traded that urgency for a system. The system works. It just works completely differently from everything that came before it. The fire's still burning, we just moved it indoors, put it behind glass, and scheduled it for 45 minutes on a Tuesday.